Welcome, the Lord's chosen. Heaven is not impressed by noise. It responds to alignment. That truth alone unsettles a lot of people, because it dismantles the popular idea that recognition always comes with visibility. Most of what truly matters never trends, never goes viral, and never gets applauded in real time. And yet, those unseen moments carry weight, real weight. The kind that shifts things you can't immediately measure. Here's a grounded fact most people overlook. Psychologists and behavioral scientists agree that the hardest moral decisions are not made under pressure, but in freedom, when nothing is forcing you, when no one is watching, and when there is absolutely no consequence for choosing wrong. Those are the moments that reveal who someone actually is, stripped of performance and fear. Spiritually speaking, those are also the moments that carry the deepest resonance. Today wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't look like a breakthrough on the outside. In fact, if we're being honest, it probably felt a bit anticlimactic. No lightning, no choir, no instant upgrade, just a quiet choice that cost more than it showed. And that's exactly why it mattered. Because heaven doesn't celebrate what looks impressive to people. It responds to what is costly, voluntary, and real. The kind of obedience that doesn't announce itself. The kind of integrity that doesn't post receipts. The kind of alignment that happens while everyone else is busy chasing outcomes. There's also something slightly funny about it. Most people assume touching heaven requires grand gestures, deep voices, or perfectly timed moments of inspiration. Meanwhile, the real work is happening in ordinary situations, with ordinary people making unglamorous decisions that won't even earn a well done from the room. No applause, no audience, just truth and you. And that's the tension of this moment. What you did today didn't look holy. It looked inconvenient. It didn't feel powerful. It felt restraining. But restraint is often the language of trust, and alignment is often mistaken for delay. This isn't about being chosen in a dramatic sense. It's about being aligned when drifting would have been easier, explainable, and socially acceptable. And that's why this moment matters more than it appears. Because heaven noticed. Not the noise, not the effort to be seen, but the quiet decision that proved who you really are. Number one, you chose integrity when no reward was guaranteed. There's something deeply unsettling about doing the right thing when you already know it won't benefit you. No recognition, no payback, no hidden advantage waiting later. Just a clean decision that costs you something and gives you nothing you can point to. That's what made this moment different. This wasn't integrity as a strategy. This was integrity as a stance. Most people are honest when honesty is convenient. They're fair when fairness doesn't threaten their comfort. They stand firm when standing firm is being watched. What you did cut against that pattern. You chose alignment even though it would have been easier to bend quietly and move on. And the truth is, no one would have blamed you. That's the part that exposes how real this choice was. When there's no reward on the table, integrity becomes expensive. It costs time, ease, approval, sometimes even momentum. It slows things down. It makes you look foolish in a world that worships outcomes. And yet, that's exactly why it carries weight. Because nothing external forced your hand. You weren't cornered. You weren't trying to earn anything. You simply refused to betray what you knew was right. That kind of choice reshapes a person from the inside. It strengthens something quiet but unbreakable. It teaches you that your character isn't dependent on applause, that your values don't need an audience to survive. And once that lesson lands, you move differently. You stop negotiating with yourself in private while presenting strength in public. What makes this moment significant isn't that it looked noble. It probably didn't. It likely felt frustrating, inconvenient, maybe even lonely. Integrity without reward rarely feels heroic. It feels heavy. It feels like restraint. It feels like walking away from something you could have justified taking. But this is where trust is built. Not trust from people, but trust in yourself, and trust from something higher that sees beyond outcomes. When integrity is chosen freely, without payoff, it signals maturity. It says you're no longer driven by what you can get away with, but by who you refuse to become. That's why this mattered. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was voluntary. Not because it was visible, but because it was costly. And that kind of integrity doesn't fade, it compounds. Number 2, you resisted the shortcut that would have worked. This is where the decision gets uncomfortable, because the shortcut wasn't fake, reckless, or doomed to fail. It would have delivered results. It would have saved time. It would have moved things forward fast enough to quiet the doubt. That's what made it tempting. You weren't choosing between right and wrong in an obvious way. You were choosing between fast success and slow alignment. Shortcuts are rarely evil. They're practical. They're efficient. They make sense on paper. That's why most people take them without hesitation and never look back. And in your case, the shortcut wouldn't have ruined your life or exposed you. It would have worked just fine, but it would have trained you to trust outcomes more than your inner compass. Resisting that kind of shortcut costs more than people realize. It means accepting delay without drama. It means letting momentum die down instead of forcing progress. It means watching others advance while you stay put, knowing you could have kept up if you'd bent just a little. That tension eats at the ego. It challenges the belief that doing things the right way should always feel rewarding. But here's the deeper layer. Shortcuts don't just skip steps, they skip development. They rob you of the patience, discipline, and clarity that only come from doing things clean. They make you dependent on methods instead of grounded in principle. And over time, that dependence quietly weakens you. What you did was different. You chose to build the kind of foundation that doesn't panic under pressure. You refused to let speed decide your values. You accepted temporary stagnation over permanent compromise. That choice signals long-range thinking, not moral perfection. There's also a kind of loneliness that comes with this decision. You can't explain it easily because it sounds like self-sabotage to people who measure success only by movement. So you carry it quietly. You let the moment pass. You don't announce it. You just live with the weight of knowing you said no when yes would have made life easier. And yet, that resistance sharpens something inside you. It teaches you that you are not at the mercy of urgency, that you don't have to rush just because something is available. Over time, this kind of discipline compounds into trust in timing, trust in process, and trust that when progress comes, it won't own you. That's why this mattered. You didn't just avoid a shortcut. You protected your future self from becoming someone who needs them. Number 3, you corrected yourself without being exposed. Few moments reveal true strength like correcting your own mistakes before anyone points them out. Most people wait until the consequences arrive, until someone notices, or until a crisis forces action. That's easy because it gives the appearance of reason. It feels justified. What you did, however, wasn't reactive. It wasn't about saving face or avoiding blame. It was about noticing a drift inside yourself and taking action while no one else even knew there was a drift to notice. That requires honesty the world rarely rewards. Correcting yourself in private is a silent kind of courage. There's no applause, no pat on the back, no acknowledgement that you've done the hard work. And that's exactly why it matters. It's easy to correct behavior when the spotlight is on you. It's far more revealing to adjust when no one is watching, when the only eye catching the misstep is your own. That's where character is born, away from the noise, away from judgment, away from reward. It also takes clarity. You had to see the error without excuses clouding your judgment. You had to confront the truth, admit it honestly, and act decisively before external pressure demanded it. That kind of self-governance is rare because it requires humility and self-respect to coexist. You had to care enough about your own integrity to act, not because you were forced, but because you understood that leaving it would erode something deeper than reputation. It would erode your sense of who you are. There's a certain power in that invisibility. You weren't performing. You weren't trying to look good. You weren't trying to prove anything to anyone. You simply aligned yourself with truth, quietly, efficiently, and without hesitation. And those moments, though unseen by the world, resonate far longer than public acts ever do. What you did was an investment in your own soul. You didn't wait to be caught, corrected, or shamed. You stepped up first, proving that real maturity isn't measured by how well you respond to pressure. It's measured by how well you respond before the pressure ever arrives. That's why this mattered, and that's why it signals something far greater than anyone around you could ever fully understand. Number 4, you stayed clean in a system that rewards compromise. The world is full of environments that quietly teach the opposite of what they preach. Everywhere you look, shortcuts, bending the rules, and cutting corners are normalized, celebrated even. Success in these systems rarely asks for purity. It asks for adaptation. And yet, you didn't adapt in that way. You stayed clean. You refused to trade your values for convenience, profit, or approval. That's not easy, because compromise is often disguised as necessity. The people around you, the culture, even the circumstances, all whispered that a small bend wouldn't matter. Most would have taken it. You didn't. Staying clean in such an environment is like swimming upstream against a current that looks harmless at first. It wears on you, it isolates you, it makes you seem stubborn or naive. And yet that very resistance is where real power lives. Because every person who compromises gradually loses control over their own conscience. They measure success externally, with eyes always on recognition and results. You didn't. You measured success internally, against standards no one else could see, and refused to let the system rewrite them. The quiet significance of this is massive. While the world around you celebrates outcomes, you preserved process. While everyone else was chasing approval, you preserved character. And that is far more valuable than any temporary reward that compromise might have offered. There's a deep, almost invisible force that begins to build when someone refuses to yield. Trust in yourself, clarity in decision-making, and a sort of moral immunity that eventually affects everything you touch. This doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't feel victorious in the moment. You might have gone unnoticed. You might have been frustrated watching others rise through shortcuts or bending the rules. But what you did has lasting effects. Systems crumble, people fall, principles endure. And by staying clean, you positioned yourself not just as someone who survives, but as someone whose foundation is unshakable, whose choices carry integrity, and whose alignment will eventually set the standard for what real strength looks like. This was costly, quiet, and invisible, but it mattered more than any applause ever could. Number 5, you let go of being right in order to be real. There's a strange kind of strength in choosing authenticity over being right. Most people cling to being right because it feeds the ego, shields the pride, and gives a sense of control. Being right feels like power, like validation, like proof that your mind is superior. But what you did was different. You let go of that craving. You didn't argue to win. You didn't defend your position to dominate the narrative. You chose reality over reputation, truth over ego, and alignment over approval. That takes courage because it feels like surrender at first glance. and surrender is uncomfortable. Letting go of being right doesn't mean being weak. It means valuing the deeper truth that life isn't about proving yourself to anyone. It's about staying consistent with what you know to be real. You accepted that clinging to a point, a label, or an argument might protect your image in the short term, but it wouldn't protect your soul. That choice is subtle, but seismic. It shifts the weight inside you, loosens the chains of defensiveness, and frees energy that would otherwise be wasted on justification, pride, or tension. The power of this moment is almost invisible to the outside world. People often mistake silence for weakness, compromise for fear, and restraint for lack of intelligence. But what you did was deliberate. You recognize that holding tightly to being right is often holding tightly to illusion, and sometimes the only way to align with the bigger picture is to release it. You made a decision that looked like restraint but was really an act of liberation. By letting go of being right, you preserved integrity. You kept your mind flexible, your heart calm, and your spirit aligned. You didn't trade reality for victory. You didn't negotiate truth for comfort. And that's exactly why this moment matters. Not because it was dramatic or noticed, but because it rewired something essential within you. The understanding that true strength often doesn't roar. True strength listens, accepts, and acts from authenticity rather than insistence. You became real when the world expected you to insist, and that choice carries weight far beyond any argument ever could. Number 6, you stopped performing and started obeying. There's a huge difference between doing what's expected for show and doing what's required in truth. Most people live in performance mode. They pray to be seen, act to impress, or behave to collect approval. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it shapes every decision. You didn't play that game. You stopped performing. You stopped measuring every action against how it would look to others. Instead, you obeyed. You aligned your actions with what you knew was right, even when nobody was watching and even when it didn't give you status or recognition. That shift changes everything. Obedience in this sense isn't about blind rules or mindless rituals. It's about consistency with principle, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or counterintuitive. It's about acting because you understand the value of alignment, not because you want applause. Most people resist this because it looks passive or small. They think that obedience without acknowledgement is pointless. But what you did proves otherwise. Real power isn't in how loudly you act, it's in how faithfully you move, and that often happens in silence. The subtle beauty of this choice is how it rewires the mind. Performance teaches you to react, to calculate, to protect. Obedience teaches you to surrender, to focus, to trust. By stepping out of the performance loop, you freed yourself from ego-driven chaos. You acted from principle rather than spectacle, from commitment rather than convenience, and from understanding rather than approval. That is what makes alignment unstoppable. It also comes with an internal cost, because the world rarely rewards quiet obedience. Most of the time, your actions will be invisible, misunderstood, or even ignored. That's the price of truth. And yet, that's exactly what gives it value. You weren't performing to be noticed. You were building integrity the world couldn't counterfeit, loyalty the world couldn't bribe, and alignment the world couldn't replicate. By stopping performance and starting obedience, you positioned yourself beyond public opinion, beyond temporary reward, and beyond the shallow measures of success. That decision carries weight quietly but powerfully. It's proof that you act for the right reason, even when no one would think it matters. And that is exactly why this moment resonates far beyond what anyone can see. Number 7, you didn't weaponize your pain. Pain has a way of tempting people into the wrong choices. It whispers that revenge is deserved, that bitterness is justified, and that anger can be used as a tool to control, manipulate, or dominate. Most people give in to that voice without realizing it, turning every wound into a weapon aimed at the world. You didn't. You carried your pain without letting it become someone else's burden. That restraint is rare because it's uncomfortable, inconvenient, and often invisible to others. It doesn't earn applause, and it certainly doesn't feel glamorous, but it marks the difference between reaction and mastery. Choosing not to weaponize pain isn't easy. It requires awareness that pain is yours to process, not a license to hurt. It demands patience, humility, and a refusal to justify actions based on emotion. Many would have used the moment to gain leverage, prove a point, or finally assert control. You didn't. You kept your wounds private, dealt with them honestly, and refused to allow them to shape your decisions in destructive ways. That's what separates maturity from mere survival. There's also a subtle but profound power in this. When you resist the instinct to hurt back, you preserve clarity. You don't let bitterness cloud your judgment or dictate your relationships. You remain capable of seeing truth beyond anger, making decisions beyond emotion, and building something stronger than spite. Pain becomes a teacher rather than a weapon. It strengthens without corrupting. What you did also communicates a quiet authority. People may not notice it immediately, but those who recognize it understand the depth of your self-discipline. You are no longer a product of your circumstances or wounds. You are someone who can move forward with intention, unaffected by the instinct to retaliate or manipulate. By choosing this path, you've transformed something destructive into something constructive. You didn't let pain define you, direct you, or degrade you. Instead, you allowed it to refine you, and that's why this moment matters. Resisting the urge to weaponize pain doesn't just demonstrate self-control, it signals a level of spiritual and emotional intelligence that changes how every choice you make from here forward will land. Number 8, you honored a boundary that cost you connection. Setting boundaries is easy when it's convenient or when everyone agrees. The real test comes when honoring a boundary threatens relationships, approval, or comfort. That's exactly what you did. You didn't compromise to keep peace. You didn't blur the lines to fit in or be liked. You drew a firm line, even knowing it might create distance, discomfort, or misunderstanding. That kind of courage is subtle but seismic, because it signals that your integrity is stronger than your fear of isolation. Boundaries that cost connection are painful. They require standing alone at times, watching people you care about step back or react. They force you to prioritize your principles over temporary acceptance, your values over instant comfort. Most people fold under that pressure, softening or negotiating until the boundary no longer exists. You didn't. You honored it fully, showing that your alignment isn't negotiable, even for someone else's convenience or desire. The power of this choice goes deeper than the surface conflict it might create. By maintaining the boundary, you preserved clarity for yourself and for everyone else. You communicated who you are without needing to justify it, and you protected the space needed to act, think, and live without compromise. That kind of self-respect is magnetic, even if it initially repels. It sets a standard for how others can interact with you and teaches that relationships must be rooted in mutual respect, not convenience or demand. This is rarely celebrated in the moment because the world mistakes compromise for diplomacy and appeasement for kindness. But true strength is often silent. It's measured not by how many people you keep close, but by how faithfully you maintain yourself in the process. You demonstrated that connection is not the ultimate goal. Alignment is. By honoring that boundary, you refused to dilute your values for the sake of belonging. You accepted short-term discomfort to protect long-term integrity. That choice reshapes the way you move in the world, showing that real power isn't in pleasing others. It's in being whole, centered, and untouchable by the demands of compromise. Number 9. You chose patience over proving a point. Most people rush. They rush conversations, decisions, and moments of clarity because proving themselves feels urgent. They feel the need to respond immediately, to win arguments, to assert knowledge, or to force outcomes before the timing feels right. What you did was different. You chose patience. You didn't react to pressure. You didn't fight to validate yourself or push for immediate recognition. You understood that some battles aren't won with words or force, but with timing, observation, and quiet endurance. That choice is invisible to most people, but it carries immense weight. Patience in this context isn't passive. It's not waiting blindly or letting things slide without attention. It's an active decision to stay aligned with truth and clarity while others act impulsively. You held yourself back because you knew rushing would dilute your integrity, misrepresent your intentions, or create unnecessary conflict. That restraint is hard because the world around you rewards speed, boldness, and immediate results. Choosing patience is often mistaken for weakness, indecision, or hesitation, when in reality, it is an exercise of extreme self-control and strategic foresight. The deeper impact of patience is in what it cultivates inside you. It teaches you discernment, the ability to distinguish noise from signal, reaction from purpose. It trains your mind to trust timing rather than ego. It allows clarity to mature and understanding to settle in a way that force or haste never could. By choosing patience, you prioritized alignment over appearance. You understood that proving yourself now doesn't matter if it undermines your long-term integrity or vision. Patience also demonstrates humility. It shows that you are not controlled by the need for approval or validation. You are willing to let outcomes unfold in their own time, confident that truth will reveal itself when it's meant to. That's a rare kind of strength, one that quietly commands respect and shapes results in ways the impatient will never see. By choosing patience over proving a point, you elevated yourself above immediate gratification. You acted from principle rather than impulse, understanding that timing is as powerful as action itself. And that is why this moment matters. It proves that true influence is rooted in restraint, wisdom, and the courage to wait when everyone else is rushing. Number 10. You accepted being misunderstood without self-betrayal. Being misunderstood is uncomfortable. It makes people defensive, anxious, and sometimes even vengeful. Most would try to explain themselves, justify every word, or reshape their actions to fit someone else's perception. That's the easy path, louder, faster, and socially acceptable. What you did was different. You didn't bend to clarify, defend, or perform. You accepted being misunderstood and stayed true to yourself. That choice requires an uncommon kind of strength because it strips away the security of approval and leaves you standing firmly in your own truth. Accepting misunderstanding doesn't mean ignorance of reality. It means you recognize that others see only a fraction of the story, filtered through their experiences, biases, and emotions. Most people don't tolerate that reality. They chase acknowledgement, fearing invisibility or rejection. You didn't. You understood that integrity and alignment are more important than perception. You kept your actions consistent, your values intact, and your soul uncompromised, even if no one else could see or appreciate it. There's a quiet liberation in this choice. By refusing to negotiate your truth for comprehension, you reclaim power over your own life. You refuse to be defined by opinions or judgments that are not yours to own. That kind of resolve rewires the way you respond to criticism, conflict, and skepticism. Instead of reacting, you remain anchored. Instead of justifying, you maintain clarity. And that is far more effective than any immediate explanation ever could be. This decision is also a subtle form of courage. The world often mistakes visibility for validation, misunderstanding for failure, and silence for weakness. You proved the opposite, that you can be invisible and still strong, misjudged and still aligned, doubted and still unwavering. That's rare because it requires self-awareness, patience, and a deep trust in your own moral compass. By accepting misunderstanding without betraying yourself, you showed that your truth doesn't depend on recognition. You acted from principle rather than performance, and that choice creates a quiet but unshakable authority. It's proof that alignment matters more than applause, and that being true to yourself is the highest form of power anyone can achieve. Number 11. You acted from conviction, not fear of consequences. Most people make decisions based on fear. Fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of failure, or fear of what others might think. It's a natural instinct, but it's also a trap. Decisions born from fear are often reactive, half-hearted, and temporary. What you did was different. You acted from conviction. You moved because you understood what was right, necessary, and aligned, not because someone could punish you, criticize you, or withdraw approval. That choice isn't just brave, it's transformative, because it signals a freedom most people never achieve. Acting from conviction requires clarity and courage. Clarity because you must know your principles well enough to trust them above external pressures. Courage because following them often comes with discomfort, opposition, or misunderstanding. While fear-driven decisions chase safety, conviction-driven choices chase integrity, alignment, and long-term truth. And that's exactly what separates ordinary action from extraordinary impact. There's a unique strength that comes with this kind of action. When you act from conviction, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop adjusting based on what others might think. You move with purpose that doesn't wobble under scrutiny. Fear-driven behavior might win small battles, gain approval, or protect image temporarily, but conviction is durable. It compounds over time, building a reputation, influence, and internal authority that no external threat can dismantle. Acting from conviction also reshapes relationships, environments, and even circumstances. People notice it instinctively, even if they don't immediately understand it. Conviction carries weight because it radiates certainty and alignment. It's magnetic and unsettling at the same time. Those around you may resist it, challenge it, or even misinterpret it, but it moves things in ways fear never could. By choosing conviction over fear, you proved that your decisions are not transactional. You acted from principle, anchored in self-trust, rather than reacting to potential backlash or consequence. That kind of alignment is rare, and it leaves a permanent mark. It signals that you are guided by something higher than opinion, higher than risk, and higher than temporary gain. This is why your choice matters. It demonstrates the kind of courage and integrity that can't be manufactured, only lived. Number 12. You broke a pattern that ran deeper than habit. Breaking a pattern isn't just about changing behavior. It's about confronting something that has been quietly controlling you, shaping your decisions, and dictating your responses for longer than you can remember. Most people don't break patterns because it's uncomfortable, because it challenges identity, or because it risks everything that feels familiar. What you did was different. You recognized a cycle, one that may have been normalized, repeated, and even justified, and you stopped it. You chose to act differently when repeating it would have been easier, safer, and unquestioned. That's rare, and that's extraordinary. Patterns run deep because they're not always visible. They live in small compromises, repeated excuses, and unconscious reactions. Over time, they become invisible scripts that guide your life without your conscious consent. Breaking one means seeing it for what it is, owning the part you've played in it, and deciding even when it's hard, that the cost of continuation is greater than the cost of change. That's exactly what you did. Stopping a deep pattern requires strength because it usually carries social, emotional, or psychological consequences. People around you may resist it. Systems you've relied on may feel destabilized. You might even doubt yourself, tempted to slip back into comfort. But you didn't. You chose discomfort over familiarity, clarity over repetition, and integrity over convenience. That's a decision few can sustain because it demands consistent vigilance and courage. The impact of breaking a pattern is often invisible at first. It doesn't show up immediately as recognition or reward, but it reshapes your internal world completely. You stop reacting automatically. You start making conscious choices. You gain the ability to influence the direction of your own life instead of being led by repetition. And that freedom compounds over time, touching every action, decision, and relationship. By breaking a pattern that ran deeper than habit, you refused to be a prisoner of history or conditioning. You demonstrated that true strength is not in avoiding difficulty, but in facing the uncomfortable truth about yourself and refusing to be bound by it. That choice is rare, costly, and profoundly powerful, and it marks a shift that echoes far beyond the moment. Number 13. You valued character over timing. Most people chase timing. They chase the perfect moment, the opportunity that promises recognition, reward, or advantage. They want results to align with schedules, deadlines, and public expectation. What you did was different. You didn't let timing dictate your choices. You acted from character. You chose to do what was right, necessary, and aligned, even if the timing seemed inconvenient, slow, or unpopular. That kind of decision is invisible to the impatient, but it carries a depth that immediate success rarely achieves. Valuing character over timing isn't easy. It means resisting the urge to act for validation, to respond for appearance, or to seize a fleeting opportunity at the expense of integrity. It means understanding that some decisions cannot be rushed without losing their meaning, and that acting prematurely can cheapen the impact of what's truly important. Most people compromise, justify, or delay in ways that protect comfort, but dilute principle. You didn't. You held your standard, even if it meant missing the immediate applause or risking temporary disadvantage. The deeper power of this choice is in its ripple effect. When you act from character, your actions are anchored in permanence rather than circumstance. Timing can be manipulated, missed, or misunderstood, but character is unshakable. You demonstrated that true alignment is not transactional. It isn't determined by schedules or public perception. It is consistent, deliberate, and principled. That kind of alignment commands unseen authority, earns silent respect, and builds credibility that lasts far longer than any timely action ever could. Choosing character over timing also cultivates internal freedom. You are no longer a prisoner of urgency, expectation, or external pressure. You make decisions that matter, not just for immediate outcomes, but for long-term impact. You act from purpose rather than panic, from principle rather than convenience, and from truth rather than timing. By prioritizing character over timing, you demonstrated a level of maturity and foresight that few people reach. You proved that integrity cannot be rushed and that real influence grows, not from acting at the right moment, but from acting rightly, regardless of the clock. That is why this choice matters. It marks the difference between temporary success and lasting significance. Number 14, you aligned when no one would have blamed you for drifting. Most people follow the path of least resistance. They drift, bend, or compromise when circumstances allow it, when no one is watching, or when deviation seems justified. It's easy, convenient, and socially acceptable. What you did was extraordinary. You chose alignment at a moment when deviation would have gone unnoticed, excused, or even expected. Nobody would have blamed you for drifting, yet you held your ground. That's the kind of choice that rarely gets recognition, but it carries the deepest weight. Aligning when it costs nothing to drift is a test few pass because it demands inner discipline. It's easy to stand firm under scrutiny or when there's pressure. That's performance. It's far harder to remain steadfast in private when convenience, comfort, or subtle temptation quietly calls your name. That kind of alignment reveals the true measure of your character. It shows that your principles aren't conditional on visibility or reward. They're anchored in conviction, purpose, and self-respect. This moment matters because it separates you from the majority who bend silently. While others rationalize, excuse, or justify choices that drift from truth, you acted decisively and intentionally. You didn't wait for circumstances to force your hand. You didn't rely on fear, expectation, or reward to guide you. You acted because you understood what was right and chose it freely. That voluntary alignment carries far more power than any forced obedience could. There's also a quiet but profound ripple effect. Aligning in such a moment trains the mind, strengthens the spirit, and sets a precedent for all future decisions. It builds a foundation of integrity that cannot be shaken by circumstance or opinion. Over time, these unseen moments compound, defining a person in ways that applause never could. By choosing alignment when drifting was acceptable, you proved that your values are unshakable, your integrity is uncompromised, and your actions are deliberate. That choice is rare, costly, and invisible to most, but it resonates with a force that cannot be ignored. It marks the difference between living reactively and living deliberately, between fleeting morality and enduring character. Conclusion: what you did wasn't flashy. It didn't make headlines or demand applause. It didn't rely on timing, shortcuts, or public validation. What you did was far rarer. It was deliberate, costly, and real. You acted from integrity when no reward was guaranteed. You resisted shortcuts, corrected yourself quietly, stayed clean in compromise-filled systems, and chose authenticity over being right. You obeyed when performing would have been easier, refused to weaponize your pain, and honored boundaries that cost connection. You practiced patience over proving a point, accepted misunderstanding without betraying yourself, and acted from conviction rather than fear. You broke deep-rooted patterns, valued character over timing, and aligned even when drifting would have been easy. All of these moments, though subtle and unseen by many, add up to something extraordinary. They show a person who is no longer defined by circumstance, opinion, or reward. They reveal a spirit anchored in principle, a mind disciplined in choice, and a life moving with intention rather than reaction. This is the type of alignment that touches something higher, that resonates far beyond what the world can measure, and that leaves a lasting impact on everything and everyone it touches. You've demonstrated that true strength, true influence, and true purpose don't come from what is visible, applauded, or convenient. They come from the quiet, unseen decisions that define your character, shape your future, and set the standard for what is possible when someone chooses to live deliberately. Today wasn't just another day. It was a moment where alignment, courage, and integrity converged, and the result is nothing short of remarkable. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more powerful insights. Like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today, because alignment like this is contagious, and it inspires more than just applause. It transforms lives. Stay blessed always, and Happy New Year.